In the vast expanse of galactic archaeology, Earth had always been the equivalent of a misplaced puzzle piece, one that seemed like it should fit, but somehow defied all logic and reason. The esteemed halls of the Transgalactic Archaeological Institute buzzed with their usual scholarly intensity, filled with the universe's most distinguished researchers. But today, that hum carried an unmistakable undertone of frustration, an irritation so vast it could only be described as cosmic-level academic pettiness. Another civilization gone. Professor Retic announced to the packed auditorium, their tentacles flailing in a gesture universally recognized among xenoanthropologists as the equivalent of throwing their hands up in exasperation. The holographic display behind them flickered to reveal yet another archaeological site from Earth's prehistory, showcasing the all-too-familiar and infuriating pattern that had tormented their studies for ages. The pattern was always the same. A civilization emerges, flourishes, constructs something unnecessarily massive and pyramid-shaped, and then, without warning, vanishes, leaving behind no traces, no explanations, and not even a forwarding address. It was enough to make any self-respecting archaeologist's appendages twitch. "Colleagues," Retic continued, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with barely controlled scholarly outrage, "we have cataloged 17 major civilizations on this single planet, and each one has disappeared under increasingly baffling circumstances. It's as if they're doing it on purpose just to mock us." From the back of the auditorium, Professor Motto, an expert in planetary developmental patterns, raised one of their eye stalks. "Has anyone considered that maybe Earth is just exceptionally terrible at sustaining civilizations, like catastrophically bad?" The suggestion was met with a kind of silence typically reserved for researchers who suggested that ancient stone circles were actually landing pads for spaceships. Ironically, one of the few theories about Earth that have been completely disproven. Lead researcher Caver, whose deep fascination with Earth had earned him the nickname, the Dirt Whisperer, among their peers, pulled up another hologram. This one displayed a timeline of Earth's history, riddled with so many question marks that it resembled the work of an overly enthusiastic punctuation fanatic. "Look at this pattern," Caver insisted, pointing at different points along the timeline. The Atlantean civilization, gone. The Pre-Saharan Empire, vanished. The Antarctic civilization, both literally and figuratively buried. And don't even get me started on that promising group in the Pacific. Perhaps they all simply decided to take a simultaneous vacation, suggested junior researcher Palix. The room was immediately engulfed in a silence so ominous it could only be described as academically fatal. The truth was, Earth had become the laughingstock of the galactic archaeological community, the only planet where civilizations seemed to have a shorter shelf life than a Betelgeuvian flash fruit. The running joke at the Institute was that Earth civilizations didn't collapse. They simply took extended coffee breaks that inexplicably turned into permanent disappearances. But it was Caver's latest discovery that had sparked this emergency session. They had stumbled upon something buried in the data, something beyond the usual earthly anomalies, a pattern within the pattern, a mystery wrapped in an enigma and camouflaged in a Save the Dinosaurs t-shirt. "There's something else at work here," Caver whispered, their voice carrying the reverence of someone discovering that their research funding had just been approved. These civilizations didn't just disappear. They were relocated. The auditorium erupted into the academic equivalent of an all-out brawl, though with more peer-reviewed insults and significantly fewer thrown chairs. In the midst of the chaos, Caver's holographic displays shifted, revealing a series of energy signatures that made no sense, unless one knew precisely what to look for. And after 30 years of studying Earth's frustrating tendency to misplace entire civilizations, Caver finally understood what they were seeing. The truth was far more absurd than anyone had imagined, even by the standards of a species that evolved to communicate through interpretive dance. The hologram flickered again as Caver pulled up their most damning evidence, a collection of quantum decay patterns that practically screamed, "Nothing to see here," in the most suspicious way possible. The kind of readings that made seasoned researchers suddenly consider early retirement. "These energy signatures," Caver explained, their voice trembling with the thrill of a breakthrough, "appear at every single site where a civilization vanished. And they're not natural. They're technological." They paused dramatically, having rehearsed this moment in front of their bathroom mirror for weeks. Advanced technological signatures from a species that, supposedly, hadn't even invented the wheel yet. A stunned hush fell over the auditorium, the kind of silence one experiences upon realizing they've just sent a reply email to the entire department. Professor Retic's tentacles had twisted themselves into what could only be described as an anxiety knot. "But that's impossible," Motto protested, their eye stalks contorting in bewilderment. These civilizations were primitive. They were still arguing about whether fire was a good idea. Caver's bioluminescent spots flashed in what their colleagues recognized as the universal academic expression of "hold my beer." That's exactly what they wanted us to think. They pulled up another hologram, displaying a series of seemingly unrelated artifacts from different eras. "Look at these so-called primitive tools. Notice anything strange?" The gathered scholars leaned in, scrutinizing the collection of stone tools and ceremonial objects. At first glance, they appeared completely ordinary for their respective time periods. "Too ordinary," Caver revealed triumphantly. "Their props." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Carefully crafted, deliberately placed, meticulously aged, like a stage set for the galaxy's longest-running archaeological production." The implications were staggering. Each vanished civilization had left behind exactly what archaeologists expected to find. No more, no less, as if they had followed a script. Meanwhile, in a supposedly classified section of Earth's global data network, which Caver had access to what they insisted were completely legal research methods, they found something even more astonishing. Files masquerading as mythological texts about gods lifting entire cities into the heavens. They weren't myths, Caver explained, practically vibrating with excitement. They were relocation manifests. Every time a civilization on Earth reached a certain level of advancement, typically after constructing something unnecessarily large and awe-inspiring, they didn't collapse. They packed up and left, not in a panicked rush, but through a methodical, carefully orchestrated relocation, complete with what appeared to be interstellar change-of-address forms. Professor Retic, whose tentacles had untangled themselves just enough to allow for a feeble gesture of comprehension, asked the inevitable question. But why? Why go through all this trouble? Why not just develop normally? Caver's expression shifted to what their species considered a smirk, though to others it resembled a sneeze. "Because, my dear colleagues," Caver declared, pulling up the final and most damning piece of evidence, "Earth isn't what we thought it was. It's not a home world. It's a testing ground." The hologram shifted, revealing a web of connections between Earth and numerous locations across the galaxy, each one coinciding with the sudden appearance of a new civilization. Cultures that had seemingly skipped the chaotic early phases of development and emerged fully formed, with shockingly Earth-like traditions. "They've been running a cosmic civilization incubator," Caver announced, admiration and professional jealousy mingling in their voice. "Developing cultures in controlled conditions and relocating them once they prove viable. It's brilliant. Absolutely insane, but brilliant." Cav's next revelation came from what humans called their cloud storage, which, as it turned out, was actually a sophisticated backup system for civilizational development data. The recruitment brochure they found there, cleverly disguised as an ancient prophecy, read like a university prospectus from a dimension where reality itself had tenure. It offered everything from flexible scheduling across multiple time periods to hands-on experience in civilization building, complete with practical exercises in mysterious disappearances. The benefits package was particularly impressive, covering everything from comprehensive cosmic insurance, including paradox coverage, to multidimensional retirement planning. The inclusion of dental coverage for all species seemed almost mundane compared to time travel accident coverage and the interdimensional health plan. Special programs included exchange opportunities with parallel dimensions and internship positions across various time periods, while research opportunities ranged from multi-epoch development studies to advanced divine intervention techniques. Perhaps most telling was a revelation about Earth's social media, a system that proved to be an incredibly sophisticated network for tracking civilization development projects. Every cat video, every viral meme, every seemingly pointless trend served as part of an ongoing study in cultural evolution. The infamous Tide Pod Challenge, a controlled experiment in decision-making and group behavior. Cryptocurrency, a practical exercise in economic theory. Even reality television, much to everyone's surprise, served as a long-term study in social dynamics and conflict resolution. The human response to being discovered was characteristically academic. They simply sent out a mass email acknowledging the galactic archaeological community's inadvertent enrollment in their observational archaeology program, complete with backdated credits and current course offerings. The message managed to be simultaneously informative and completely absurd, listing everything from ancient aliens theory workshops, fully booked to the next millennium, to the continuation of Mystery Meat Tuesdays in the cafeteria. Their upcoming events calendar was particularly enlightening, featuring an annual time travelers convention, with multiple dates available naturally, an interdimensional cultural exchange fair, and even a So You Think You Can Civilize talent show. The Graduate Student Support Group for the Temporal Paradox Division suggested some particularly challenging academic experiences, while Faculty Wine and Cheese Night's request to bring your own timeline hinted at the truly interdimensional nature of their operations. The available resources section read like a wish list for every archaeologist who'd struggled with ancient mysteries. The Writing Center specialized in hieroglyphic proofreading, while the Mathematics Tutoring Center accepted all base systems. The Temporal Mechanics Workshop and Prophecy Verification Services explained so many historical inconsistencies that several researchers had to lie down. The Archaeological Evidence Placement Office's very existence answered countless questions about surprisingly well-preserved artifacts. Administrative reminders about maintaining proper temporal distancing and filing paradox resolution forms in triplicate painted a picture of bureaucratic complexity that spanned not just apartments but dimensions. The request to keep civilization development licenses current and update multidimensional contact information suggested a level of administrative organization that made typical university bureaucracy look positively streamlined in comparison. As the galactic archaeological community came to terms with their newfound status as unwitting graduate students, Earth continued its work as the universe's most peculiar educational institution. New papers began appearing in journals across the galaxy, now featuring mandatory footnotes acknowledging their connection to the Earth Institute of Civilizational Development. These notes carefully specified that no civilizations were harmed in the research process, though several did require extensive counseling after attempting to decipher human entertainment programming. The implications continued to ripple across the academic community. Every archaeological mystery, every unexplained historical event, every bizarre coincidence suddenly made sense when viewed through the lens of academic administration. The Dark Ages? Clearly a sabbatical. The Renaissance? Obviously a particularly ambitious faculty research project. The Modern Era? Just the latest in a long series of ongoing longitudinal studies. Humanity's seemingly contradictory behaviors now had an elegant explanation. Their simultaneous capacity for brilliant innovation and baffling oversight, standard teaching methodology, their apparent inability to achieve global unity despite having all the necessary capabilities, a carefully maintained learning environment for studying social development, their peculiar habit of documenting everything while pretending to know nothing, basic academic record-keeping. In faculty lounges across multiple dimensions and time periods, human professors were probably having a good laugh about the whole thing. They'd managed to run the galaxy's most prestigious educational institution right under everyone's noses, disguising it as a somewhat backward civilization that couldn't quite figure out whether or not it was alone in the universe. Their entire history of apparent bumbling progress and inexplicable developments was actually a carefully crafted curriculum designed to show developing civilizations exactly what to do, and more importantly, what not to do, on their path to galactic citizenship. The universe, as they say in academia, had come full circle, or perhaps more accurately, full spiral, given the nature of temporal mechanics in the advanced curriculum. And somewhere in a timeline that may or may not exist yet, a new class of civilizations was probably just beginning their orientation, ready to start their own journey through Earth's unique educational experience. One thing was certain. The galactic archaeological community would never look at mysterious disappearance the same way again. After all, it's one thing to lose a civilization. It's quite another to realize they've just graduated with honors